right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Shem. Good to have you, good sir. Um,
Sure.
well, I delayed this stream, I think, by like 48 hours. So I apologize to all the tortured souls out there. Like, the worst was like, originally I was like half an hour, half an hour, half an hour. Then I was like, oh God, I need to like go to work. So then it was 12 hours. Then it was another day. But now we're here and it's Friday and we're freestyling it. Um, yeah,
48 hours later. Let's get it.
48 hours later. And speaking of 48 hours and my big announcements, I am actually going to be able to launch and be launching my Weekend at BurnEye's 48 hour streams coming soon. And it has to do a lot with, getting a second studio, a second, I guess another warehouse to set up my silk screening printing equipment at, and there I'm also going to be setting up an art studio and a second podcast studio, and I'm partnering with Joe Schmo's Coffee. And Joe Schmo, let me tell you, one heck of an awesome individual, and we're going to be launching the Average Schmo's Cup of Joe podcast there as well. And including it all together, I'm going to be launching a bunch of different pilot project streams, and it's going to be such things as luring my friends like Shem into episodes and then getting him to dispose all of his editing tricks for us and learning how to do video editing. I'm also going to be doing like graphic design as well as sound engineering and physical printing of shirts, silk screening, all sorts of different educational.
So 48-hour stream, you're gonna like stream yourself making the shirts and stuff, or what do you mean by
Well,
that?
that'll be part of it, but it's like you gotta sleep, you gotta be human, and you gotta like have a schedule. So it's all going to be pre-scheduled. It's probably going to be about 24 hours worth of actual live and like other live things such as like APEC, which is 8 hours. So that right there is 2/3 of one of the days of the live. And then the other 24 hours will be just a bunch of previously recorded 2-hour podcasts after each other, sort of thing.
Nice. Oh yeah, good stuff. Putting in work.
Exactly. And it also gives me a spot to drop ship so I can actually finally sell my clothing and build an online store, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, congratulations on getting that together. It's pretty cool.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And yeah.
Is that a custom hoodie right there that you made, or is it just
this is custom, but I did not make this one. This one is what the hell is it? Christian Audige back in the day. I used to also have like a fight store. I also had Honor of the Culture.
Why are Canadian people so good at just making businesses randomly? It's like Outman had like 3 businesses this year.
Oh, I also got Up North Records. And speaking of new businesses, I am starting a couple more. And I guess up in Canada, we're cold, we're isolated, so somehow it makes us entrepreneurs. Another project I'm going to be doing is called AAA, and it is Adept Alchemist. And if anybody out there wants to like try drawing up some logos, essentially it's 3 capital A's, and then I'm thinking like 3 pyramid A's on top of each other, or mountains, or something like that. Interesting logo. But basically going to take a whole bunch of my art that I have that be printing a second clothing line that isn't just weed related or fight related, but is just art related. And then I might actually, I'm thinking of incorporating my printing company into a company called Icon Clothing. So Might do something like that, or something like Icron. Who knows?
You already have like the website set up and stuff, or did you use one in the past, or what?
I have or had burncron.com. My webmaster, I guess, didn't pay this year, so I have to like figure that out. But we might be getting, or Joe Schmoes is gonna be building and paying for the online store. So I guess whatever store name website we come up with will be announced. Thinking something like uh, a coffee and an art show or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. All right.
I'd show for that.
Moving on. What else do we have to discuss today?
Well, what have you been looking into?
I have been looking into more of what is around me and planning the summer trip. This right here is um, the Mystery Rocks at Cypress Hills Interprovincial Park in Saskatchewan. And coming up in the next couple weeks, finally having an interview with Michael Collins of Wandering Wolf. And he's the one that took this picture. He's been to many of the sites, but we're going to try to do a tour at the end of this summer to a lot of these sites again, as well as cross the border in Montana around Giants Playground, and of course also checking out Sage Wall. And this is on the north side of the border here in southern Alberta on petroglyph at Writing on Stone UNESCO Park. This is Giants Playground. Very interesting. It's like the similar of what some claim to be geopolymer, but definitely polygonal structured looking, if megalithic made. And then also planning on doing a full expedition to this site at I'm gonna have to figure that out actually pretty quick, because when I was there last early summer, the owners were already so worried about forest fire, brush fire breaking out. But this time last year, Alberta was already on fire and it like burned for like 6 months straight. So hopefully this year is different and we get more precipitation. But either way, gonna figure it out. Gonna actually do a full exploration there. And this place, Writing on Stone. Lots of hoodoos, and lots of carved petroglyphs at Writing on Stone.
Nice. That's gonna be a good trip.
Right? And I'm probably going to spend 2 to 3 days at this site, because it's so large and that you have to book private canoe guided tours to get to a lot of the ancient petroglyph sites there. This is an above view of one of, I believe, where this is in Giants Playground, Montana, and that this is a astrological calendar set up, megalithic astrological calendar in Giants Playground, Montana.
I haven't heard of it before.
Yeah, it's all part of Julie Ryder's discoveries and sites. This also being carved in the eagle on one of the rocks at Giants Playground. And this troll looking dude also at Giants Playground. This is real, not AI, and apparently at Giants Playground. So that I gotta see.
What was up? So was that first thing you're showing? Was that part of a wall? Was it? How large is it? The
This
walls,
guy?
it is. No, the first picture with the stones that were.
Oh, okay, we'll get to an above view of all of it here coming up soon. This is like a penguin or some sort of bird. I forget exact type, but also at
A great auk.
sorry,
A great auk, the penguins
Grant.
that used to be in North America until the French came over and basically annihilated them.
What? How have I never heard of those?
Yeah, the Jacques Cartier guy who came over and he has like that journal he wrote or whatever. He's talking about the island of birds in Canada is just like filled with those giant penguins. But yeah, just like the giant beavers that were over here when they arrived, they're extinct now because of over hunting and stuff. Basically the trade.
So we were
And
only told of buffalo, but there was probably mastodons and mammoths amongst everything else.
but yeah, I guess so. But the beavers, for example, they were just these massive, like I think they're like 3 or 4 foot tall beavers that were hunted to extinction, and then like these penguins once again. I mean, the smaller version of them still exists that can fly, but there was a penguin type as well. Fortunately,
That's
it went
wild.
extinct in the 1850s or something.
Just horrible how much we've killed and hidden.
Oh
Or
yeah, I had to stop reading his journal once I got to that part because I was just thinking about it too much. Took a little break, but it was yeah, it's a weird book because it's like very similar to the Marco Polo book. It has the same exact style, but both of them were based on translations by a guy named Ramusio. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if you've ever read Marco Polo before, but like the way the titles are set up, the way that the writing is, like everything is the same exact thing in the Cartier book.
I have not, but I think I need to.
I'll bring up a picture of the Great Auk. Why not? Yeah, RIP to this thing. So yeah, these were all over North America
Okay.
before humans did their thing. So they went extinct in 1852. Here's the old map of where they were.
Wow. All the way through Europe and everything. They
Yeah, this is
followed them
this,
up.
this is pretty much what I've been looking into recently. Is just how basically Europeans allegedly arrived in America. Starting mostly, I'm mostly focusing on the northern parts like Canada down into Chicago. I've been obsessed with Chicago for about 6 months, but yeah, it's I don't know. There's there's a lot involved with the story. It's really strange.
Yeah, they, right, like, in so many cases, truth is stranger than fiction and the fiction that we've been taught as truth.
Here, let me show you. So this is that Cartier journal, and what's interesting is that he says right here about the natives that he comes across, they all paint themselves with certain tan colors. So this is kind of alluding to them being white and then painting themselves tan, right? I mean, and the person who even wrote natives on the side right here, just for anyone who didn't know. But yeah, this is the Remesio guy, the same guy that wrote the Marco Polo book. Let me show you an example of the titles I was talking about. So like right here, of some capes to wit, Cape Double Point. So this is the type of when you read Marco Polo, this is the same way it's set up, and you can see that this edition, of course, has tons of notes from the scholars, the experts. They have to disprove everything. Sometimes these footnotes are as simple as they literally just put he described this inaccurately, even though it's like a firsthand account of what he's seeing. They have no shame whatsoever. They just like no reason why he didn't describe it inaccurately. Just that's it. Just take my word for it. But yeah, so
The trust me, bro history.
but yeah, I guess those are some of the birds right there.
Man. So it was like the North American dodo, but they were also in Europe.
Well, they're basically penguins.
Penguins.
But yeah, they were. I don't know.
It's crazy.
But yeah, what's even I don't know. So what's even more crazy about all that is that what it seems like is that a lot of the star forts that we have in North America were basically built for these merchants. Like they would basically go to a new area and build these star forts to protect themselves from the natives, and then their main goal was to like marry into the natives and become nobility within the Native American tribe. So some of the people came over in history. They say they went native, so which basically means that they married into the Native American tribes, became the chief or nobility, and then had special trade connections with certain lines sent back to Europe with their old families because these people have an international, like they're known for being international traders. So like every time a king or a country needed someone to be there, they would get these specific merchants who already could speak the same language as these people in other areas. So it just made it a lot easier. And
That actually makes.
that's, I mean, we talked about this in the past. Like, how did Marco Polo understand all of these people as he was traveling through the Mongolian Empire back in the day to talk to the Tartars? How did he already know the language? That's because before Marco Polo got there, there was already the ancient Silk Road, the regular Silk Road, and there was a group of people called the Radanim, which are these merchants, once again, who would travel and set up these star forts or these fortified cities along these trade routes to protect themselves. So, what's the significance of the star fort? Why would they choose to make it that way? Well, within their belief system, they have this concept called a Eruv, which is the way of building a structure or confining a city to a certain limit so that on Saturday or on the Sabbath, they're able to carry things from inside of their house to the outside of their house. If not, they have to stay in their house basically on Saturday and not leave. So this concept called a roof, if you build walls to a certain height and put things inside of it, and it's basically considered to be a certain type of community, you're allowed to break certain rules of on Saturdays. Let me show you an example of this. So in modern cities, like for example, if you look this up right now, in your city, if you live in a major city, you likely are a roof, and what they do is they to kind of like hide it, they disguise it with like power lines, and back in the past it was telegraph lines, stuff like that. So they would put up these poles and intertwine them with these lines, so no one really knows where the boundaries are besides the people who make these decisions. And I mean, sometimes it's controversial in certain cities. For example, in Columbus, we have Bexley, which is like a really affluent neighborhood, and the entire area is a roof, so people that live there can go out on the Sabbath and do things. Same thing with downtown Columbus. There are certain areas that are set up to be a roof, and they can leave on Saturday. So a star fort, when these people are coming over to trade, let me see if I can get a map or something. When these people are coming over as merchants, keep in mind what time period they're coming over here after the Alhambra decree being expelled, basically going to other countries and getting charters from the kings to set up to have certain trade privileges over in the New World. So when they get over here, they build these star forts. Within the star forts, they have everything they need. They have schools, shops, whatever, and it's a roof. They can work within in their comfortable way on Saturday without having to worry about things. I'm trying to find a map here. Some of these forts. Of course, it's very small. So yeah, basically they showed up, they went down and they started just building these forts as they go along. So they kept going further and further. That's why you have that star fort in Chicago that I've been looking into that's mentioned in the Treaty of Greenville in official U.S. documents as a fort being there, is because these merchants made their way over here and built these forts to protect themselves and integrated into Native American society, basically. So why was it so easy for them to integrate into Native American society? Well, a lot of people speculate it's because the Native Americans were ancestors of these people who had come over from the other side, and also from uh, places like Norway, or in the past. I mean, keep in mind the Vikings have the same exact ritual on Saturday. They would take baths, the ritual bath on Saturday. It's some sort of ancient religion that's had these same practices for a long time. It's all confusing. It's really hard to understand, but uh, so basically, the story of North America is, from what I've been looking into recently, is like it seems that a lot of these merchants basically got charters from their king to come over here and have certain privileges because they weren't even allowed to become citizens in their home countries because of their status of their religion. So they got special charters from these kings to come over to North America and create these new places. So you had the French ones, and then of course you had Sweden as well, but New Sweden was attacked by New Amsterdam and basically kicked out. Then you had of course the British taking the place of New Amsterdam after uh, that whole thing happened with the king over in England. But basically, these people who got these special trade privileges to set up the 13 colonies from the British side were fighting with the French version, who oftentimes had converted to Christianity by this point. But keep in mind, this conversion was a surface level thing, and the origins of Christianity could also have something to do with these merchant people. But we won't get into that right now. But yeah, so a lot of these star forts that you see, they're just old, you know,
Trading forts.
yeah, so even like the ones you see along the Silk Road out into Asia, like Samarkand, stuff like that. It's the same concept.
Okay,
It's the
that
same
makes
concept.
sense.
But when you look into these like all of these places have a community of certain people living there, and that's how they were able to communicate so easily in the past because these people already spoke the same language because they were all connected by this ancient religion. Now the origins of this religion, I don't know. I mean, goes back to the Greco-Roman society. It seems like it has to be even before that because there's been disagreements between the Greeks and the other people, so it's hard to tell, but it basically involves a permanent fire. I don't know. I
Right?
don't know if
There's
I don't know if you want to get into that really, but
Yeah, it's interesting stuff, and it brings a lot of questions up of such groups as the Métis that were like half French, half indigenous, and um, like you said, the star forts going out through the old Silk Road, and how ancient some of those are supposed to be dated, but then
well, the interesting thing is like when we think about the Métis, I don't know. The Greco-Roman myth, like the Titanomachy and stuff like that, seem to be allegories for something else that's happening. For example, what I find really fascinating is that with the 12 Olympians, you originally have 14 Olympians, and there's a parallel between that and the 12 tribes and the 14 tribes of Israel. I think it's completely fascinating. And the people that replace the Olympians, like Dionysus, for example, uh, replace one of the Olympians, and then that could be a representative of this merchant class of people who currently are doing the things we're talking about. And Metis is interesting because Zeus, his first wife was Metis or Metis, named the same thing as these Native American people, and there was a prophecy that scared him to about how his child with Matisse would be so powerful that he would overthrow Zeus. So Zeus is like, no, we can't have that. I just overthrew my father, Cronus. So basically, he like consumed Metis, and she lived inside of her. And then uh, Athena was also like born out of that somehow while inside of Zeus. And I don't know if you ever heard of there's like this anime called FLCL or Fooly Cooly. Have you ever heard of that before?
I have not.
It's really weird because it's like this stuff comes out of the character's head. But the same thing happened with Athena. And when I heard about the story, I just thought about how they like hide these themes in every TV show and every movie, pretty much. But anyways, so yeah, Athena was basically like the child of Zeus and Matisse, and it seems like this could be some sort of allegory for something that took place with the Native Americans, or maybe it's something unrelated entirely. I don't know. Really strange. So basically, I guess we could talk about the colonies and the American Revolution, for example. So I was saying earlier about how these people they got special charters from kings. So every single colony, every single state, when they first were founded, it was founded off a charter. Charter would basically give permission for them to have certain trade privileges and basically just legally bind some sort of thing to what they're doing. So this is where it starts to get weird because you have the reshuffling of people throughout history. And why do you have the reshuffling of people throughout history? Well, my opinion is that these merchants, it's basically like a never-ending pyramid scheme, is what it seems like. So they make promises to people, do
Yeah.
this, and you can accomplish this. So once too many people get that, that's when they have to like shuffle people around. They have to cause a conflict. They have to do something to cause a conflict. So how would they get people to immigrate to the United States back in the day? They would give them these indentured servitudes or make certain promises to them, like, hey, you work for 7 years, then you get to basically start your own plantation down here, and then you can own slaves and do the same thing and make tons of money and live the American dream, right? So here's an example of one of these uh, charters from Virginia. And what I want you to notice about this is section 9. It says, hold on, let me zoom in a little bit. No master of a servant can make a new bargain for service or other matter with his servant without privity and consent of the county court, to prevent the master's overreaching or scaring such servant into unreasonable compliance. 10. The property of all money and goods sent over thither to servants or carried in with them is reserved to themselves and remains entirely at their disposal. So this part right here is the most fascinating part. Each servant at his freedom receives his master 10 bushels of corn, which is sufficient for almost a year, 2 new suits of clothes, both linen and wool, and a gun, and becomes free in all respects and much entitled to the liberties and privilege of the country as any other inhabitants of the natives are, if such servants were not aliens. So you can see here, this is basically what, like, the servants are getting this promise in the future that, hey, you're going to be taken care of if you fulfill this contract. What's interesting is that at a certain point, some colonies were doing something to where the child born of the master and like the female slaves was no longer automatically considered free, which is weird because it kind of, if you think about the religion we were discussing earlier, the birthright is through the mother. For them to be considered to be a part of the religion, after Herod the Great, they changed it to the mother because Herod was only leader because of his father. So they like decided among themselves, hey, we're never going to let that happen again. So they transferred it over to, like, if you have a mother who's involved in this religion, that's how you basically remain as a part of it. So since so many people were taking advantage of this and so many people were becoming free, they had to change it because, once again, they seem to want to maintain a certain type of power and control over everyone else, and they think that they're born into this. They think that they have the right to do this.
The divine sovereign.
It's really
They
strange.
believe. That is. That's wild. It's very similar Romanesque kind of earning your freedom and becoming a slave owner.
Well, the weird thing is that the American Revolution, basically what happened is, like, I don't know if you've ever heard the story of El Dorado, but it's basically like, it's almost like an allegory for what happened with the American Revolution, and obviously it's probably something that happened in, South America as well. But people were wondering, like, once these merchants got these special charters from the king of France or England, whoever, uh, they're wondering, like, wow, how are they so prosperous? So they sent people over and they asked them, and they're like, oh, well, they explained the setup that they had. So then when they go back and tell the king's like, oh, well, I got to start taxing these people. I got to start getting more of it because they're getting taxed through, they're not getting taxed through their land ownership because they're not legally allowed to own land according to their, uh, which is why they have these corporations set up to own the land as opposed to them. That's why they need these charters, because they're not legally allowed to own land. So everyone else is paying property taxes, but they're just paying income taxes. So once the king finds out, he's like, okay, so we got to put a stop to this. So during the American Revolution, believe it or not, the majority, like a majority of Americans, like average people who didn't own these types of things, who weren't in control, who weren't the nobility, did not want to leave. They did not want to have the revolution. But the people in this religion, over 90% of them were in favor of this because they were losing their special trade privileges.
Interesting. That's wild.
So yeah, it's almost the same thing with the Civil War too. They're basically just like, people in this religion were the ones who owned the slaves mostly. 20, like they're the ones who had 20 or more, or often like they would make promises to people, hey, you could eventually also, you know, do what we're doing. But then once everyone started doing it, they had to put a stop to it.
These are the sea people, essentially. They were the merchants that controlled everything and went everywhere, and then tell us that they weren't there at all.
Yeah, it seems like it. Will. I don't know. There's multiple opinions about who exactly they are, but some people say that when the sea people came, basically, or some people say it was the Philistines or something, where after the fall of the new kingdom of Egypt, they were pushed back into the mountains, and then they came into contact with these certain people called the Kenites, who were like a nomadic tribe that sounds similar to the Mongols or something like that. And those people basically introduced weapons to them, so they were able to go back and retake the land. What's fascinating to me is that you don't learn really that the Levant, like the place of where Israel is and stuff like that, you don't learn really that that's on the African plate. And it was also a part of Egypt back then. So when they talk about the exodus from Egypt, they may not necessarily be talking about Egypt, the
Oh,
Egypt that we're thinking about, right? They may be talking about this time period where they had to leave the Levant to go down into the mountains of that area, and that's when they came in contact with these Kenites. So what's interesting about that is that before this time period, there was no mention of, like the tribe of Judah, for example. So that's where some people speculate that these Kenites were the ones who came into this religion, kind of like potentially hijacked it and changed it, but it's hard to tell exactly what's going on. The way that I suggest people to look at this is simple. When you think about what's going on with the Christian church today, like just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you agree with, say, for example, LGBTQ plus people being in the church or being pastors. But being a Christian, someone on the outside looking in might assume that since you're a Christian, you believe in that stuff and you support it. Like whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's completely up to you, to each his own. But what you need to do is you need to think about that from the Jewish perspective as well. The Jewish people have the same problem within their religion. They have a certain group of people who are joining, calling themselves secular, and doing the same things within that religion. So like a majority of these people claim to be secular or atheists. They don't, they're not religious. They openly say we're not religious. So you see where, like, can you see the similarities between that and what's happening with Christianity or even in Islam nowadays? Like,
yeah.
I mean, so to simply say that, you know, a certain group,
Godless people.
a certain group of people is causing all the problems is just laziness. It's just repeating what you've heard other people say without actually looking into it, in my opinion. But
I agree. There's so much like distorted history and truth and manipulation and
one thing that
violence.
people don't understand, like both Islam and Judaism also have the same concept of the Holy Spirit, same thing as Christianity. Why is that? And why don't you know that? And why, when you type in uh, on Google, do Islam and Judaism have the Holy Spirit? It's going to say no until you actually like read the books and find out for yourself that they actually do. Like for example, the Holy Spirit in Judaism is called Ruach HaKodesh, and in Islam it's called Ra al Quds. So it's like,
Very
and
close.
you find the same Trinity within both as well. So why do you have this concept that, and why do you have the Trinity in all three of them, and why do they try to keep it hidden in the other two religions, for now at least? And where does this Trinity come from?
Yeah, right. Because they call them all monotheists, yet they're trinities.
Well, my understanding is that the Trinity represents one at the end, so that's why it's monotheism.
Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, it goes back to Greco-Roman religion with like Hestia, for example, the goddess of the hearth. it was said in like Greco-Roman society that you can't start any feast or any festival or any event without invoking Hestia first, but she's already there because she's everywhere. So it's like the same concept that you find in science with like matter or like whatever else. Like every
Gotcha.
single institution basically has these same concepts and ideas within them for some reason. The reason to me seems to be that there is a specific group that travels from institution to institution, religion to religion, everything, just basically applying the same themes to everything. Yeah, so someone said Elohim. So yeah, back in the times we were talking about earlier, there were multiple gods within the Canaanites, and El was basically seen as like the god who does nothing but I guess like the creator, but doesn't really have like a main job. And for some reason, certain tribes started to try to say that their god was El, and that's where some of these disputes started happening between the different Canaanite tribes. There's my dog. The Charlemagne situation is really strange to me as well. I've been looking into the Bach saga recently because so many people are talking about it, and there's a concept in it that kind of seems to me to be describing why they say so many Europeans are descendants of Charlemagne, or why they say so many Asians are descendants of Kublai Khan or Genghis Khan.
Really? So I haven't really been following that. Do you go into detail a bit more, please?
I mean, I'm still pretty new to it. It was hard to find anything about it, really. Thanks to Juan from One on One Podcast for finally giving me a good source for it. But basically, it sounds insane. Like it's insane. First of all, it's a really like inappropriate, not PG-13 type of thing. But
All right, never mind then.
well, I know we can talk
We'll
about it.
go.
But
We'll put her on Rumble at a later date.
well, I was just saying like the entire story, but this section is fine. So basically, what they would do, I guess, was they would have, and this is fascinating because it ties into the whole concept of the cuckoo bird as well. But so basically, what the theory is within the Bach saga that they would have the king or whatever the leader would have all of his underlings like basically ejaculate into a container, and then the king would drink all of it and basically breed with all the women and have tons of children with all these people's wives using their essence from their body. So when you think about these statues, like for example, the statue of Columbia or whatever you want to call it, the goddess basically holding the staff with the cuckoo bird on top of it. A cuckoo bird is known for having other people raise its children for them.
Yeah, yeah. The nest stealer kills the other bird's eggs and then puts in its own.
So where my mind was going when I was reading the Bach saga, which this could be completely wrong, is that it's kind of describing the original gods who were these leaders who would do these types of things, and one day someone, like the Prometheus type or the Lucifer type, whatever you want to call it, rebelled against and gave the knowledge to everyone else, like, hey, you can have kids, you can do exactly, you don't need to be doing this, you could be like God. But obviously this is like complete speculation, but it was just really interesting to me that that's what was popping in my head when I was thinking about this. I'm thinking, well, they do talk about how everyone's descended of Genghis Khan. They do talk about the Charlemagne thing. I don't know if there's probably other examples I'm forgetting about or don't know about. And then, yeah, once again, you have this, I don't know, you just have these stories of, someone forsaking God or God forsaking someone. That's actually the original meaning of atheist, is forsaken by God, I believe. But
Really?
I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. The Bach saga, it could just be a giant joke, honestly, because some of the stuff was just so absurd. It's hilarious, but I try to entertain
It's
all
the
sorts of that.
ultimate troll.
Yeah, it could be just like the Robert Suffolk, blue boss thing.
Didn't hear about that one. Now I'm gonna have to look into that.
Well, he basically just tells people like, "Hey, don't climax. Just get close to
What?
climaxing and stop, and then go do something."
Why do people get so like? does fame just make people like absolute weirdos, or like I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, how do you go from investigating alternative history to trying to dictate your sexual or the sexual actions of all your viewers? Like,
Well, let's see, he got popular. So my thought process is if he is trolling, it's like he's basically like trying to entice people to like have sex with him so that he'll be like, no, let's do it. Like, well, we're gonna unlock our inner potential, and then like he just like comes, he's like, oh my bad. It's ridiculous. But I don't know, it could be true. I've never had a good experience of ever doing that in my life. I guess the thought process behind it is you're supposed to when you start you automatically keep in your head that you're never gonna climax. So I guess that's supposed to help. I don't know. Really weird stuff.
neither do I. To each their own. I just say keep it in the bedroom, right? Like,
Post
then
on
the
YouTube.
happens, and now we're talking box sagas.
But yeah, I mean, been looking into stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot to it. It's just
Right? Like, then the legends of the homunculus, and it's like, were they cloning? Is it just like this weird way to clone, easy way to clone, God technology, or essentially? Very strange.
well, that's what I was thinking about when I was looking into the Holocaust is because I guess there's like it doesn't contain like a full soul. It's only like a piece of a soul, and it's just like in a permanent or it's in a temporary vessel. And I was just thinking about if there was like if there were controllers, then maybe they created us, and this is just like an allegory for them describing the process. I don't know because just thinking about the Akashic records or the concept within the Zohar where they say basically these people believe that every night when you go to sleep you like return to the source and get replenished and other spirits are able to enter your body during that, or it's possible that you could like lose when you're outside of your body and these don't come back.
Yeah.
So it's all weird stuff.
It's the metaphysical side.
When you're dealing with a janitor, you get the sloppy interpretations and bad retellings of it. I apologize.
Oh, it's all good, man. You're doing great. So enjoy it. And it's like the average individual doesn't even really read these days. And here we are going through uh, nonstop history, real investigations. And
Well, I wasn't even look. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't even looking for what I came across when I started looking into this stuff. Like for me, it's been changing my life. It's been pretty overwhelming just to find out this type of information because I don't know, like I wasn't expecting it to actually be partially some of the stuff to be partially true or basically when I go to like watch a guy giving a lecture at Harvard or something on YouTube, I'm not expecting him to come out and say basically the stuff I just told you. Among themselves, they're able to talk about it, but if someone outside of the group says it, it's like censored or considered racism or like sometimes like anti-Semitic or whatever. But they can say it openly among themselves, and it doesn't make any sense. I guess
that's
I
the
guess that's part
double
of the
class.
initiation.
It's apartheid, essentially. Mythicast, thank you. Membership. I got this idea about Genghis Khan and Bach Saga. They would mate in a ritual with select men. The Khan haplotype is shared by the majority of man. Right? Like, these are facts that it's like, what was something huge happened at that point, and it's like, how did one individual just rape and pillage and then rape every woman across, like, what is that, the continental Eurasia? It's crazy.
Well, a lot of the concept of I guess like the concept of the Messiah also plays a role in this. Like for example, Cyrus the Great. what's called a Messiah in history. There's Messiah. There's supposed to be like 6 positive and 6 negative messiahs. I guess a messiah within the Zohar, some interpretations among the, like the discussions of the rabbi are talking about how a messiah is like someone who does the dirty work for you. So like think about, pretty sure it was Genghis Khan that said this, like basically he was, when he was doing all this, he was like, if you hadn't have sinned, then you wouldn't be dealing with me. Like I'm the wrath of God or whatever. Like it's basically like, a type of messiah talking. So I think that that does play a role. I think that they use like certain leaders to accomplish goals. That's also plays into the population shuffling because they have these cycles that are on certain years. It's as if they've developed. If we entertain the idea that they actually are the sea peoples and mainstream history can be trusted and they've been in control for like thousands of years, then it seems like they have this cycle where they, to prevent any type of revolt or for people to figure out what's going on during a certain amount of years, they basically reset this area, shuffle the people over here, give them the same promises, build your lives over here, then we're going to reset this area, then you're going to move over here. Like think about
Yep.
like there's this really creepy prophecy within the Zohar, or maybe it's in, can't, it could be in the Mishnah Torah, I don't remember, but it was talking about like if you rebel against basically like the Levites or whoever, uh, will suck up all the water and destroy your land or something like that. It was, I can't remember the exact wording of it, but immediately when I heard it, I thought about Salt Lake City, like that area over in America. It's like completely destroyed. You know what I
All
mean?
the
And there's
Badlands
and
everywhere.
you see the layouts of the city still over there. You see the old like the old roads, the old layouts for settlements. You see like all that stuff over there. So it's like, is
Yep.
that what they're just doing? Is this something that they just do over and over again? Because if you look, I mean, if you look at pretty much any immigration, anything in history, you can trace it back to what I'm describing here. It's a certain people who are getting emancipated or escaping, oftentimes from their own leaders, who are later, for some reason, we don't know that that's what's happening. So just to be clear here, what I'm saying is that like Jewish people in history, when they were emancipated, they were oftentimes getting emancipated from Jewish people, like the leaders, the rabbi, the people who are making the rules. That's why, like on the statute,
The
like on the
secret societies that rule underneath all, essentially, or within each
I think,
society.
well, I think part of the secret society aspect of it is just, I guess, like the initiation into knowing what's actually going on or something. Like knowing as far, like I guess the way I see it is like the reason that you have these historical duplicates, the reason that you hear the same story like when you in history over and over again is because they're describing basically one thing that happened, and people who are initiated understand this. Like they understand like this story is talking about this person specifically, but we have to spread it out over 2,000 years and say this one happened in 500 BC, then this one happened in 300 AD, and then this one happened in 1750. So it's like, but people who are initiated into this know that all 3 of those stories are talking about the same event that happened. And the same thing can be said. The same thing can be said about language and music and everything else. Like, I don't know, that's where like the gematria and stuff comes into it. But
I agree. It's and they trigger wars for the populations to kill themselves so they can maintain control.
so yeah, these star forts are perfect examples of what I'm talking about. So you can see how every single thing you need is within it.
Yep.
And the natural boundaries, like as far as what can be a roof, what can be in a roof boundary, it can be a river, it can be a mountain, or it can be one of those. It can be as simple as those strings. So I think it might have been you, but I'm not sure. Recently, I heard someone talking about why did they have these rail, like those streetcars in the cities and stuff like that back in the day. It's because they're taking a loss when with these streetcars, they were literally just trying to like get people out to these new cities and these new places so that they can make money and rebuild the community. And once that had already been accomplished, they got rid of them because they no longer served their purpose.
Interesting. No, that wasn't me that said that, but interesting idea and perspective.
Where is this? This is massive.
This is India.
Oh yeah, they're dude, India. Yeah, they're so there's a, well, actually, no, let's not talk about it. the community in India exists though. Like the same people were found in India. They had no idea that they were there because some
Really?
of the trade routes were already set up in the past down there. That's why you have the East India Company, the Dutch West and East India Company. It made it easier for them because they already had the community down there to communicate with that was already established in that area.
Makes sense.
And Dionysus, some Indians say Dionysus was actually born in India, but Herodotus says that he actually just traveled over there and brought everything, like brought the religion to India. See if I can find that city on the Silk Road that was called the city of Nissa by Herodotus. I forget what the modern name of it is.
Oops, sorry, I meant to bring up your screen for you.
I haven't found it yet. Yeah, because they don't really use the same names from some of these sources for some reason. So Herodotus refers to this as the city of Nissa, the city of Dionysus, but this is Nagara. It's an ancient city, Dionysopolis. But yeah, basically Starfort, Aruv boundary right here. Also, the Kaba River counts as an Aruv boundary. So does the Cirque Road, be a natural boundary as well. But basically, this is part of the ancient Silk Road. So this community was already established in the past. So then the second Silk Road, they had the connection there as well. And then with the Radanim in the seventh century to the 9th century, same thing. Then with Marco Polo, when he traveled all across Asia with the Khans, could already speak the languages, already had these settlements set up because he was a merchant. Same thing. And then with the Dutch East and West India companies, when they went back over there and connected again, they already had these communities set up. I mean, even today, some of these people actually went back to Israel and became halakha, which is like basically accepting these oral traditions from the rabbi. And they just discovered that they're there. I mean, this is in every part of the world, including Japan. The most interesting thing about this is that, so what do these people do? They build a temple. When they have a temple, they have a fire in the middle of the temple that's burning forever. So it's similar to Zoroastrianism. It's similar to the ancient mystery religions with the constant burning flame that never goes out. The Olympics, everything. So once they rebuild the temple, if they do, that's what's going to be in the middle of the temple is an eternal flame that never goes out.
Really?
They sacrifice animals twice a day. So why is that interesting? Because in Japan, you have the same exact thing. You have a high priestess is the only person who can enter this inner chamber, the sacred fire that sacrifices animals. Of course, they don't sacrifice animals anymore because then people would be able to make the connection too easily, but they sacrifice ox, lamb, cattle, same thing as what they sacrifice in the temple in Jerusalem. Another fascinating thing about that is that there's a group of people called the Samaritans, which are a sect of Judaism that claims to be the original Jews, and they have a temple on Mount Gerizim in Israel, who some people say was the original temple. And so they were part of the northern tribes of Israel, like the 10 tribes in the north, which is a lot of sources say is fictitious that there was ever a united kingdom, but according to that theory, they were in the north. So what I find fascinating about these Samaritan people is when they pray, they prostrate the same way that Muslims do. So that's basically when you drop to your knees, then you put your head onto the floor and you pray. And they do this 3 times a day, which is what Shia Muslims do.
Really?
So these people were actually exiled during the time of the life of the Prophet Muhammad. So when the Prophet Muhammad learned from the Jewish people, he was learning from the Samaritan people more than likely, is my opinion on their other arguments from whom he learned from. But in my opinion, it appears to be the Samaritans because they have so many similarities within their practices. But yeah, there's only like 800 of these people left, and they're right in the middle of this whole Gaza conflict going on right now, and they still have their temple, but it's like destroyed. They still make sacrifices there to this day, apparently.
Wow.
But there's like, I think there's
That's
only around 800 of them surviving today, and they have their own version of the Torah, and they don't accept the oral tradition, which is why they have some sort of conflict with the. They're not halakha.
I pray for that whole region, and I also pray that they don't trigger another reset and trigger us into all killing each other. Say no to war, everyone.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opinions I have on that. I don't know if they're appropriate for your channel or not.
We'll go with not today in this episode, but in an episode very soon. And we'll do half on YouTube, then half on Rumble and Odyssey. And we'll also have Elkman on that one for sure.
Shout out Elkman.
Shout out Elkman. And shout out Science of Sound. Doing a new episode of that tomorrow. Maybe we'll just keep this to an hour tonight if you're down with that.
Yeah, I'm down for whatever.
Okay. Just as I am pretty tired after a long week of moving everything, and
you want to check this out real quick?
Yeah.
I don't. It's just a random bookmark I have. It's a 1797 encyclopedia for fortification. The art of fortifying a town or other places, or putting them in such posture of defense that every one of its parts defends. And hold on, let me zoom in a little bit. Basically, what the note said talks about this being connected with that certain religion that I was talking about. But it's been a few months since I've read this. Oh, here it is. It's right in the second paragraph. The origin and rise of fortification is undoubtedly owing to the degeneracy of mankind. In the first ages of the world, men were dispersed up and down the countries in separate families, as we are told in the histories of the Jews and Scythians who wandered from one place to another for the sake of finding pasture for the cattle. These families became, in time, so numerous as to form large communities, which settled all together in a place from whence villages and towns had their origin and rise. But they found it was necessary for the common security to surround those towns with walls and ditches to prevent all violences from their neighbors and sudden surprises. So immediately, what stands out to me is that for some reason they say Scythians were nomadic people who never built fortifications.
Right?
So,
I just made that same mental note though. It's like, what? Weren't the Scythians supposedly also Tartarian?
yeah, and Ashkenazi as well. There's so many different opinions about who these people are. But so yeah, it just talks about how the origin, like in 1797, the encyclopedia is saying that the origins of fortifications come from the Jews and the Scythians. Some people say that the Ashkenazi come from the Scythians. I'll show you this. I have the second edition of the Tanakh where it shows a map. Hold on, I'll just bring it up.
Okay.
So this is showing that the Scythians are the Ashkenazim. And this is from grab the book real
Right
quick.
there in the Black Sea. Oh.
So yeah, it's from the Jewish study Bible, the Tanakh. The Book of the Prophets, the Nevi'im. But yeah, if you want to cut it off, go ahead. Appreciate everyone for hanging out. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you hanging out and joining, and we'll as I finally get settled into my new print shop and streaming more often, first major thing I'm going to do is get my ass way more organized and start scheduling weekly shows well in advance so that we can actually have them structured with specific, themes, topics, and presentations and the rest of it. So we will be doing this again very soon. And the next one, hopefully we also have Elkman on and maybe Estra.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, I like planning. I'll stream it on my channel if we plan it out too. One last thing is this: when Commodore Perry forced the Japanese borders open, this is what the Japanese were drawing on the American flag as a Star of David for some reason. So this is a Japanese print of Commodore Perry's black ships, the steamboats. The USS Susquehanna has a Star of David American flag ship, and Luke from Ancient Historia actually found more flags with the Star of David on them, the American flags, and sent them to me. So
Really?
it's a one-off thing. It's very
That's
interesting considering what I was talking about earlier with the 13 colonies originally being these people who had certain charters, trade privileges. 13 tribes of Israel, 14, 12. Yeah, okay. Appreciate you guys.
very interesting. Gonna have to start out with that next time. All right. Well, thank you, Shem, brother. Much love. And you got any new videos coming out on TT anytime soon, or how's that go?
No, I haven't really been doing much, but we'll see if I'll get back into it. I only really do stuff if it's fun on that channel, really, or in general.
Fair. All right, brother. Well, thank you, and we'll see you soon. Thank you all to the chat, and ta-ta. Be back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Much love.
You crazy mother. Yeah.
It's just BurnEye! BurnEye just like last week.